There we are. So welcome back to this February edition of Training Tuesday. Today we're going to be talking about the Launchpad approval process specifically, but as part of that, we're going to review really a lot of Launchpad publishing options. A lot of options that exist in the system for how to tweak or change the Launchpad experience that your users have. So that's going to be our topic today. We're going to talk about the standard options, the use case for the new process, how it gets turned on, because the optional process you do have to request, and how it affects your users. So that's today. Coming up, we have options for displaying weather info. We're going to talk about that in our March class. Hopefully, as the weather turns nicer for all of us, we'll talk about the different ways that Korbyt can have you showing real-time weather information. Some of them free and dynamic, some of them paid for, enhanced options. But we'll look through them in that session. We're going to talk about a newer player interrupt and takeover scheduling option instead of the way it currently works with having to schedule 0-second items and interrupting. We're building new options for that. We'll talk about that in April. And new player analytic options that are coming. We'll talk about those in May. So that's our upcoming series of classes. So let's talk about Launchpad's approvals, the normal Launchpad experience in a Korbyt tenant. So that's what we're going to dive in today. Just a reminder, ask questions as you have them. Please feel free to raise hand, to chat in, to come off mute. As a reminder, I also, after we end our recording today, I open it up again for questions. If you don't want to be on the record with your questions, that is fine, and I understand. So here we are in my training tenant, and we're going to get into Launchpads, which is right there at the top of content. And at the moment, my system is fairly standard. I have a couple uniquely built for my tenant Launchpads, and then I have the other Korbyt example or Korbyt default, or just simply Korbyt provided Launchpads. Every tenant starts with these in the system for you to use. And the system is fairly set up and designed that anyone who can get to the Launchpad screen, which, if you remember our user roles, is really most users. So in terms of using the Launchpads and accessing the Launchpads, it's content authors and up. And for Signage, there's a unique user role of Launchpad only. So there are really only two roles in Korbyt that do not have access to Launchpads. One of them is read only, because they're not meant to really do anything in the system. And the other is the newer media manager user role that was recently added to Korbyt and focuses in on just really being able to edit in the media manager, add and delete items from that one place, and doesn't give a user other areas of the system. So lots of user roles get the ability to come here to Launchpads. And the idea is that however these are defined, the user is able to create and publish without any other approvals in the way. So this Albany peer-to-peer example for my system, you can change the areas of text that are allowed to be edited. You can change the image. You can even change the background image in this design. But then when the user goes to publish it, they have the options that have been set for this specific template, being that they have to enter a name. And in my system at the moment, validity dates are required. So some fairly standard options turned on to empower the publishing of these designs. So it is published now, a new layout in Korbyt in a published status with the things that I set in that example. It brought the tags with it that were attached. Some launch pads, by design, and you can create this in your own, are able to actually be assigned to items, either players or player groups or playlists. So this gives your Launchpad users another path to say where this finished design should be seen, giving them the option to directly assign it to players and player groups, in which case it creates a new playlist for those devices with this item, or to a playlist. So saying, hey, when this published item is done, add it to an existing playlist. So these are other options that can be set design by design. But it still ends up with a published Launchpad. The newer option, the one that is a request, if you would like to have it enabled, is a Launchpad approval process, creating it so that author and Launchpad level users, when they use this system, someone else will have to approve it. That setting, once you request it to be turned on, which is just an email to support@korbyt.com saying you'd like the Launchpad approval option for your system, it adds a toggle switch to your settings for Signage to enable Launchpad content approval. Turning that option on will change the way that Launchpads publish for author and Launchpad level users, for those lower level user roles. Now, when a author or Launchpad only level user uses one of these templates, the last step will ask for approvers, and they will select who should get notified. Now, the option's been turned on, and you might be saying, Ed, why doesn't this screen have the approvers option for you to select people to approve it? And well, that is because at the moment I am logged in as a tenant administrator, which lets me change system setting roles. But tenant administrators have the ability to publish layouts. So do administrators and so do approvers. So even with that Launchpad approval turned on, it does not affect approvers, administrators, or tenant administrators in the system. Since they are individuals who can approve their own creations, it does not ask them to select someone to approve the design. So that is a newer option. You have to request that it be added to your tenant to give that approval process. What that adds is the system will email the approvers, and the layout that is generated through the template, through the Launchpad, will be in a draft status in the layouts instead of a published status. So that new option, people asked for it, so we provided it into the system. There are other options that people don't necessarily know about when it comes to Launchpads, so I wanted to touch on those as well today. Before I do, are there questions from Joel or Wade? Do you have questions on just the optional approval process?
No, it makes sense from my end.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay. So some of the other options for Launchpads that are in this menu, in the settings, in Signage, that I think a lot of people overlook. One of them is enable Korbyt Launchpads. This is on by default for new tenants. If you turn it off, the effect that it will have is that now the Launchpad screen will only show your custom built launch pads. It will no longer offer up the launch pads that Korbyt provides. So that is an option that clients that heavily utilize Launchpads generally like to turn on. That way their users aren't distracted by all the examples we provide. Another setting that is very common for Launchpad control is to enable Launchpad validity dates. You'll see it's on in my system. It is generally off by default. So this is the way you will find a new tenant. By turning that option on, just one toggle, we have now added a validity date field to the publishing process for Launchpads. If you turn on the ability to have validity dates, it also turns on an option to require validity dates. So with both of these toggles turned on, it will add the validity date fields to the publishing process and require that there is information put there. There are other options in terms of validity dates. If you turn on validity dates, you have the ability to set a max duration in days for a validity date. The default Launchpad duration is part of that publishing process. If the Launchpad publishing process is going to create a new item in a playlist, if it's going to add a new layout, if it is going to create a new playlist, this is the amount of seconds that that newly published item will play. So these are system-wide options for those Launchpad templates. They are set really at that high level, that system level. These are things that are turned on or off or set at a specific value for all Launchpads. In a template by template or Launchpad by Launchpad, there are other options that can be set involving where people can assign or send their content. To control those, you have to do it at the specific predefined layout level, the item that builds that template. So if we want to take a look at those options, we need to first navigate to the layouts page. That's where you build content by hand in Korbyt. And then we need to go a level deeper to our predefined layouts section. If you've been to some of our other Training Tuesdays, we've been in this section before for web form templates. It is the same section, the same items. They are just differing in their path of use. So in your designed templates, you have the ability, if we go to that templates metadata, its settings, you have the ability to decide if the template is a Launchpad at all. Maybe you only want it to be a web form template. Let me actually zoom out a bit so I can get a little lower. Oh, can't. Okay. You can then decide if this is going to be a Launchpad, when the user uses it in that Launchpad system, can they publish it directly to players or player groups? If that is an option, when the user's content gets published, it creates a new playlist to the selected players or groups, with the only item in the playlist is the new layout. Another option is to let the user who is publishing this through Launchpads add it to a playlist. And you can turn those on or off independently. Maybe, yes, you would like this person to be able to schedule it out to the screen, but you only want to let them pick a playlist for this item to be added to rather than creating a whole new playlist. This type of option would be required if your content is being fed through another layout framework that adds things around your content. You'd want to add this new content to the existing playlist playing in that framework. So with that option turned on, users who again go back to that Launchpad section, use that template, and now when they publish it, because I turned on one of the assignment options, but only the playlist one, this user can now add the design to the playlists they have access to. Okay, it goes back to user roles and folder permissions, the playlists that I'm able to actually send the content to. And then I can add validity dates. Actually required to at this point in my tenant. So some options allow layouts to be controlled template by template as they go through the Launchpad process. Some options are system-wide for tweaking that Launchpad process. Let me go ahead and actually log out. I'll make sure, yep, it's turned on. Yeah, save. I'm going to log out of my training tenant as my tenant administrator. I'm going to log into my training tenant as a Launchpad only user. So now I land on the Launchpad screen because that's the screen I get as a Launchpad only user. I go into a template that allows me as a user to upload a full screen image. Pardon the headshots. So I can grab an image from my computer, upload it. Add my validity dates next week. Select my approvers. Did I go too far in my validity dates? I didn't think so. They're not a distinct enough name. I know I have approvers in my system. Well, isn't this always the way? You go to show something that's newer and it's going to break when you show it as an example. This should allow me to then select individuals and hit publish, and I'll have my draft layout. I'm going to have to put in a ticket to see what's going on with that.
Question on that: as you click on the approvers, is it a preset list of approvers, or is it everyone that has access to approver for that particular? Is it the playlists, or excuse me, the layout? Is it the folder of predefined layouts? Where does that approvers list come from?
So the approvers list here is going to be anyone that's an approver in the system.
Okay.
Yep.
And if I may go back to the settings on the predefined layout, if you add tags, so our use case, the one I'm thinking of is we use tags pretty heavily for automating content to automatically route to content. What happens if we also enable the users to choose their playlist for where content could be assigned? Will it respect both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. If the item has tags, any playlist that's looking for that tag is going to pick it up based on the tag. And then if the user says yes, and I'm also adding it to this playlist, it'll do both. Yep.
Okay. Cool. And if you tell the piece of, or if you enable the user to choose which playlist they want it to go to, it'll just add it there as a just
New
item on the
layout.
playlist.
Yep.
Clever playlist or otherwise.
Well, yeah, clever playlist or a regular playlist, it just adds it as a new piece of content.
Okay. Cool.
It doesn't create a new clever rule that keeps looking for like similar content. It just says, hey, this item is now part of this playlist.
And where does that piece of content, once it's approved or published, where does it live within the layout folder structure?
So if there is a folder structure, it should automatically go into the matching folder structure. So I have a folder called Albany Templates. That's where my Albany example templates live. So the content that Launchpad pushes out goes into the same matching folder name structure that came from
The
this
predefined.
in the
Okay.
predefined. Yep.
Okay. So in that respect, it follows form-based submissions.
Yes.
Got it.
And in case they tweaked something, because it used to be all approvers. So let's test something that you asked the question of. Is it the folders-based approvers? I do have a user there as the approver. Let's add a few other people that are approver level. This is that specific, like who gets notified option is for the web form, but I'm seeing if somehow it's actually tied to the Launchpad, if they merged the two ideas. So some live testing in the recording. Some good questions, though. Keep those questions coming. What other questions can I answer for you?
I mean, regarding this topic, the only other one I can think of is, I don't know if this may be a question, maybe more of a conversation piece about best practices for organizing the Launchpad. Because a lot of our predefined layouts are regionally and location based. And again, the concept there being they're come pre-built with the appropriate tags so that when submission comes in and approves, it's very light lift. You just look at it. Yep, this is good for my office and approve. And then the tags do the rest. This has potential to negate that for Korbyt users in a good way, but I like the idea of leveraging the playlist. But again, folder structure, organizational, making it sure that it's as clean as possible for those users.
Lock the launch pads. So let me get back to my administrator view. So if you're doing the playlist selection, it's only the playlist the user has access to, so it's limited in that sense. But also like which layouts I get to see. Get back to that user. Gets controlled by the same type of folder structure. So if I turn my folder structure on, here's my Albany templates. Who gets to see that the Albany templates exist? Well, I don't want global, so tenant administrators check themselves, and then I find my Albany user group. So only people in that Albany user group get to see the Albany templates that automate through tags to those Albany locations.
So the templates actually appear in that folder?
Well, yes, they appear in the folder. Most people don't go through the folder view here, though. They just see which folders which ones they have access to. So this shows, like, if I have access to the Albany and the Charlotte launch pads, I'd see both just in this non-folder view. So the folder view, if you're an administrator, lets you lock those folders, just like in the media manager or the playlists or the layout section, so that only specific users get to see those templates. It does also let you navigate the templates. Most people don't use it to like browse. They just use it for the security. But you can, like an end user can turn on the folder view. They just don't have the padlock.
Cool. Makes sense.
Yep. Good question. Good question. What other questions can I answer for everybody today about Launchpads? Launchpad approval options, publishing options. I'm gonna have to follow up with our team about why the approver option is not showing up. Make sure it's not just something I broke in my tenant. Check out a couple other internal tenants. It's one of the downsides of having one that you toggle all the options back and forth all the time on. Okay. If no questions, for the record, I'll thank everybody for joining or watching or following along. Please reach out if you have questions. Just again, that Launchpad approver option, the ability to even turn that on for that approval flow for Launchpads, for Launchpad and author level users, you do request that that be added to your system. Just an email to support@korbyt.com. Will help. They'll turn on that Launchpad approval option so that it shows up here, and then you have control of it being on or off at that point. So just kind of touch on that again. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your great questions and your participation today. And we'll see you next month for talking through weather options in Korbyt.